But there is some movement this morning on stimulus and meaningful stimulus for the American people. Now, you may recall the Emergency Money for the People Act back in the spring. Senator Bernie Sanders, Ed Markey, Kamala Harris came out and pushed for $2,000 in direct stimulus checks to the American people. And by the way, retroactive back until March. And these $2,000 stimulus checks would continue until the end of the pandemic. To which I said, yes. Andrew Yang got on board with it as well, who was a champion of universal basic income. Yes, he said. A number of other members of Congress were a little tepid. They wanted to see, I think, how it was playing out. And then when a majority of Americans said, yes, we want this. And by the way, this would be targeted. It was targeted to families that, yes, qualified a certain income level and who had been suffering. This wouldn't be going to millionaires, wouldn't be going to people making $500,000 a year, et cetera. It was going to be targeted. That was the plan under the Emergency Money for the People Act. It would have also extended unemployment benefits upwards of $600. So the news of this morning is that this could be coming back. And you have one person to thank right now, and that's Ilhan Omar, Representative Ilhan Omar. Member of the squad, of course, a progressive member. Again, this is why we need more progressive members of Congress to make these demands, to push for this type of care during a pandemic. So Representative Ilhan Omar calling for $2,000 stimulus checks until this pandemic is over. Monthly stimulus checks until this pandemic is over. She also tweeting this just a short time ago. Turns out supporting a $2,000 survival check is not only good policy, but good politics. In a few days, with Democratic Senate and House, we can pass it and have it be a recurring monthly during the pandemic. Data for Progress says a new poll, Americans blame the GOP for failure on $2,000 stimulus checks. 62% of Americans blame Republican leaders for failure to secure relief. 47% blame congressional Republicans and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. 15% blame President Trump. Here's other headlines. Most Americans blame the GOP and the Trump for $2,000 stimulus checks and the stalemate. Sure. President Trump waited until the last possible second after they had already passed a $600 stimulus bill to come out and throw a wrench into the works and call for $2,000 after they passed the $600 version. He waited till then. Then it took Republican senators flying to Mar-a-Lago to twist his arm on a golf course for him to even vote for the $600 bill, which, as we know, was fairly crappy in and of itself. But at least it was something. So then calls for $2,000 stimulus checks when he knows his Republican counterparts won't do a darn thing. And so is it any wonder why people do this to the front of Mitch McConnell's house? It's awful. I'm not condoning it. And the same thing of Nancy Pelosi. Where is your leadership? Where is your push to make sure Americans are getting what they need right now during a pandemic? So it takes Ilhan Omar to come out and say, yes. Turns out supporting $2,000 survival check is not only good policy, but good politics. In a few days, with Democratic Senate and House, we can pass it and have it be recurring monthly during the pandemic. So she is pushing for legislation that would have $2,000 monthly recurring stimulus checks through this pandemic, which is what Senator Bernie Sanders had been pushing for, Senator Ed Markey had been pushing for, and Senator Kamala Harris was pushing for before she went under Joe Biden's wing. So now we'll have to see whether or not she still supports this. I guess it really doesn't matter because she won't be senator anymore anyways. But nevertheless, will they have the support of the White House? And this push could happen by this week. If we see on Tuesday in Georgia, where things are in the Senate runoff race, if these two Republicans lose and Mitch McConnell loses, we could see $2,000 recurring stimulus checks until the end of this pandemic, being championed by more and more members of Congress now, more and more progressive members, and even members who aren't progressive, who aren't totally progressive like Ilhan Omar. Let me ask you this right now. Would you support a $2,000 recurring stimulus check? Would you support $2,000 recurring until the end of this pandemic? You know, for qualified, and we don't know what the income level would be on this, of course. So would it be $75,000 for a single person, et cetera, and tiered up from there? Or would it be the 90? Remember, with the Emergency Money for the People Act was over, I think it was $99,000, if memory serves, for a single person. So if you're making less than $99,000, you would qualify for this $2,000 a month. Ilhan Omar says, look, these one-time checks, they don't help anyone. I mean, they help for a short amount of time, but we need more than this. Here she is talking about the need for recurring stimulus.
As you know, April 1st came and people weren't able to pay their rent. May 1st came, people still weren't able to pay their rent. June 1st came, still people weren't able to pay their rent. And then July 1st rolled around. And so now we have 4 months of people who have been out of work.
And she's talking about the track record of what happens when you only provide a one-time stimulus check. People either, because they don't know when here's the problem. I've been saying this for months on this show. If you've watched my show for any length of time and you're a subscriber to my channel, then you know. By the way, if you're not a subscriber, come on, please. I'd love for you to subscribe. By the way, I know we said today was going to be the last day that we have the Santa hat, but I guess today will be the last day we have the Santa hat. So please subscribe to my channel. We do our show every day live at 9 a.m. Eastern time, covering stories that you won't hear in the mainstream media. So if you've been watching my show for any months, any length of time, you know that I've said, I think the problem with a lot of people when they got these individual stimulus checks is that it was money insecurity. They didn't know if they were going to get another one. So in Canada, the reason you've seen such success with these recurring stimulus payments, like in Canada and other countries, is because the people can count on it, right? They know it's coming. They know every month that it's coming, so they know that they can afford to buy those groceries. They know that they can afford to pay their rent. They know that they can afford to sign their child up for that school program, right? They know all of that because the government is taking care of them. But in America, we failed people, right? So we don't know that this money is we don't know that this money is ever going to come again. So a lot of people are like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And some people just put it in savings because they're like, I need this. And so what Ilhan Omar is talking about is that when, hey, April 1st rolled around, nothing. June 1st rolled around, no more checks. July 1st rolled around, no more checks. People were having to dip into that money that they got from that one-time savings, that stimulus check, and to use it. But then it all ran out, right? It all ran out at the end of the summer.
Who are unable to pay their rent. And we are looking at a complete devastation of the housing market. We are going to see a mass displacement of people if we don't urgently act. And so I've simply called for a cancellation of rent and mortgages. But as you know, in the HEROES Act that we recently passed, there is much relief in there for our constituents around this country. And you have a president and a Senate that is currently not interested in addressing the economic and social anxieties that used to exist, but now even more exacerbated because of the public health pandemic that we are dealing with. And it's just quite unfortunate that in every single speech he makes, he doesn't address the 120,000 people, including my father, who've lost their life senselessly to this virus. He doesn't address the 40 million people who are without a job and is struggling economically. They send one stimulus check of $1,200 and expect people to have that cover their rent, cover their bills for food, cover their, other payments that they have. And this is just causing so much pain for people. And so when we see people pouring out to the streets, we know that it is not just the grievance of the police brutality that exists in our communities, but it's the grievance of the social and economic neglect that many people are feeling. And so people want a just economy. People want the opportunity to house their families and feel secure in that. And people want an economy that fully functions for them, and this president can't deliver.
And then that's, again, why you see people going to the leadership, their failed leadership, going to Mitch McConnell's house and spray painting "Where's my money" on the front of the house. Again, I don't condone it at all. It's not something that people should be doing. But what we can do is vote and throw these people out, right? The power of democracy going out onto, especially in Georgia right now, this is how you get a guy out of power. Send a clear message because, Kentuckians didn't, he won re-election in November. Kentucky had the chance to throw this guy out. They didn't. And look, in many ways, it's not their fault. They're going up against an entrenched machine of money. That's how we can affect change. That's how we can throw these people out. And look, we're not calling for socialism. I want people to understand this. Lindsey Graham, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, was calling for $2,000 stimulus checks. And he said to my Republican colleagues, he said, let me be clear, $2,000 stimulus checks is not socialism. $2,000 stimulus checks during a pandemic is a lifeline to help people. And yet, Mitch McConnell didn't see fit to bring it to the floor. Remember, socialism has never existed in its purest form any time in the history of the world. There's never been a government with a pure socialist system based on the Karl Marx principles. Never existed. Never. And any country sort of where the community controls the means of production, everything, never existed. And what we're calling for is a progressive system that uses some of the money that is brought in by tax revenue and actually puts it back into the system to help people, right? Schools, healthy meals for our children, so they're eating vegetables at lunch instead of processed food. Why are we the fattest country in the world? Helping our communities with broadband access so kids who are at home get actual internet access to do virtual learning. Universal health care so that people aren't suffering. People that without a job who can't pay these medical bills right now are going into debt on their credit cards to pay them. So it's not radical. I mean, look at these other industrialized countries around the world that are providing a regular stimulus check to their people to keep them afloat during a pandemic. They're asking them to keep their businesses closed. So yes, calling for $2,000 recurring stimulus is to me, it's the minimum right now that we should be doing. I said it all summer long. When this bill was proposed as Emergency Money for the People Act, I said it then, and I'm saying it again now. This needs to happen. So again, all eyes on Tuesday. What happens in Georgia? And will Mitch McConnell lose power? If he loses power, these pieces of legislation are already unfolding. Now we've got to push and make sure that a President-elect Biden, who becomes president at the end of January, stands for this to push through a massive stimulus package with some kind of recurring stimulus for the American people, unemployment benefits, eviction moratoriums, and rental assistance. I mean, to me, those are the basic pillars. Then, of course, hazard pay and for essential workers and frontline workers who have received nothing. They're being asked to not only in many ways like having their hours reduced on top of being on the front lines, dealing with this virus, getting sick. We're asking them to do this. Nurses are having to come out of retirement. Doctors are being asked to come out of retirement right now to serve, to help. These people that are there every day working tirelessly, and the government doesn't do anything for them. But they're okay sending billions of dollars again to big businesses in Wall Street. They're fine with that. And I love that she calls it a survival check, by the way. Turns out supporting a $2,000 survival check is not only good policy, but good politics. In a few days, with Democratic Senate and House, we can pass it and have it becoming recurring monthly during the pandemic. They can do this, especially if they have the support in the Senate. And by the way, there are big pieces of this that, in fact, Joe Biden can do himself without that Senate leadership. But Ilhan Omar now calling for $2,000 recurring stimulus until the end of this pandemic. This is big, folks. Let me know in the chat what you think about this. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate hearing from all of you. So drop me a comment. Would you support $2,000 stimulus that is recurring?